Good evening, witches, warlocks, sorcerers, and adepts, to another episode of Knights of the Nephilim podcast, brought to you by my company, Celestial Oddities Radio. I am your host, Frater Crow, and I'll be leading you on this mystic and mysterious journey that we call Magick. Make sure you click the like, share, and follow button on whatever platform you're listening to us from iTunes to iHeartRadio, Spotify, Deezer, Spreaker, CastBox, Amazon, you name it, we are on it, so listen where you feel most comfortable. But please know, if you want to talk to us live during the shows, you must do that through Spreaker, which is our hosting company. That is Spreaker. You can look them up at Spreaker.com or on the app market by searching Spreaker. That'll allow you to type with us during the show using an instant messenger feature. We do read off your comments. We do read off your questions during the show, so make sure if you want to join along with us that you do so. We always encourage it. We do bring you a show each and every, well, I shouldn't say each and every week, but most weeks. We are going to be planning on doing anywhere from 2 to 3 episodes per month. This is our second official episode. So we have a lot more to come with, coming up with the show. But if you follow it or you click the like, share, and follow button, what that does for you is that not only moves you up or moves us up the podcast community rankings, it allows more people to discover the show, allows us to do more with the show, and allows you to stay in contact with new episodes as they drop, which is always a great thing. And it just ultimately keeps you in the loop with everything going on, allows you to jump through past episodes as well. So make sure you go ahead and do that for us. Like I said, you can listen anywhere that you would like, but by doing that, it will move us up the podcast community rankings. I do want to thank any listeners that were tuning into our very first official episode last week as we interviewed Martin McGregor, a fellow occult author and Satanist, a practitioner in the occult, as pretty much all of our guests will be. And we had a really great conversation, really great first episode. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Tonight will certainly be no different. We have someone that I'm very excited to be bringing on the line. But before I speak of this man, I want to go ahead and thank our sponsors, Goetic Impressions and Limitless Liberation. Both are absolutely amazing companies in the field of making ritual implements and tools. If you have not checked out these companies and you are in the magical world and you do ceremonial magic, I suggest that you certainly do check them out, because Goetic Impressions makes a lot of different tools in the Enochian side with working with angelic forces. They also make a lot of Goetic implements, medallions, charms, and things that can be used during your rituals. And then Limitless Liberation, she makes what I call pyramids of power. Pyramids of power are what I call, or what I would consider a battery for your temple and for your altar that supercharges the work that you're doing. So you can't go wrong with either. I will take a commercial break during the episode like I did last week for each of the two of them and go a little bit more in detail of what it is that you can expect from those guys. As always, I tell everyone, if you have any suggestions for the show, want to see us do anything differently, if you don't like something we're doing or like something we're doing, please let us know. I mean, feedback is what helps us continue to grow. It's something we really want to hear back from you, and you can email us at celestialoddities@gmail.com. Again, that is celestialoddities@gmail.com. So let us know what you think, and we would love to hear from you. So tonight, we have a very special guest. We have Qayin, who is not only a great occult author, but a very powerful dark sorcerer of a lot of different forms of magic, and the videos, the books, everything that this man has put out that I have been able to see, read, and experience for myself has been very powerful. So it was a no-brainer when starting this show that he had to be one of the first couple guests to be on the show, and certainly he graced us with his presence tonight. I want to tell you a little bit about him, and then we're going to bring him on the line and let him speak for himself. And I'm going to read it from his words. I hold the belief that magic is not magical, that it does not just happen, nor is it miraculous. I see it as a scientific system based on a process that we have yet to fully understand scientifically. This is based on my concept that people do not fully realize the base structure of the reality in which they are currently residing, and that they have yet to understand all the rules of the Matrix of Consensual Reality, and therefore do not entirely understand or utilize their personal energy and influence within it. I view magic as a manipulation of personal energy to restructure or influence the consensual reality matrix, to conform to the will and intent of the magician. As with all energy, I believe magic can be harnessed and directed. Spirits and entities can be contacted, and change can be made manifest without the personal grid of the magician. I can help you unlock this hidden potential. As a once head of the inner Order of the Voltec, I have had years of training in shifting my perception of reality, and thus am able to successfully manipulate the structure. The Order of the Voltec was an offshoot from the Temple of Set, which of course is an offshoot from LaVey's Church of Satan. This man's repertoire, this man's resume is impressive, and we're going to let him tell you a little bit about himself. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, S. Ben Qayin. Thanks for coming on to the show tonight, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. Thank you very much.
Oh, not a problem. Like I said, it was a no-brainer to bring you on. I'm a big fan of your work. I have read some of your books. I have followed your videos and just been following you for a while now. And to be able to pick your brain tonight and find out what makes you tick is an honor of mine. So thank you.
It's a pleasure. Hopefully I live up to expectations.
Oh, I think you will. No worries. And I'm sure you've heard with my last episode, the first official episode of the show, in any of my other radio shows I do as well, I like to start out traditional. I like to start out as an interview should and just have you tell us a little bit about your upbringing and background. I mean, did you come from a family where paganism or the left-handed path was something prevalent, or was it like myself where it was a night and day difference from the Catholicism that I grew up in to where I am now? I always like to hear from practitioners of what kind of background they had and how it changed into what you currently are, who you currently are. So why don't you give us a little bit of breakdown about that?
Yeah, no problem. I imagine I grew up a lot like most Westerners or Americans, where I remember being baptized actually when I was 3 into Catholicism. It's interesting. It was boring. I remember staring at the lights a lot. They held the mass in Latin, so as you can imagine, for a 3-year-old, it wasn't the most exciting situation to be in.
Absolutely.
But I was raised Catholic to an extent. My parents, once they divorced, it was with my mother, and she primarily went completely against that and went more with the Christian faith, which I was raised in until I was a young teenager. During that, though, it was interesting. I went to some of Catholic summer schools, the whole nuns that walk around with the ruler kind of thing. I don't recall any rulers, but they they were there. Went to Christian camps and things like that. That wasn't something that was overly religious experience for me, although that was ingrained within all that was going on. But as I grew, my mother kind of stepped away a little bit from Christianity, and we just had a normal life. I had pretty, wasn't rich, wasn't poor, pretty normal kind of situation growing up. It was when I was I would say I was about probably 15, 16. And really wanting to look into what did I want? What kind of religion, what kind of spiritual path was I looking forward to incorporate into my life? And at the time, the best resource essentially was either the public library, or you could go down to the mall bookstore and see what they had in the New Age section, which was pretty much what I was limited to. I started buying a lot of different traditions, Celtic magic. I looked into, Wiccan at the time. I looked into Egyptian magic, and though there were elements of each of these systems that resonated with me as a whole, it just didn't click, And I wanted it to. I really did. I wanted something to be like, hey, I found it. This is it. This is for me. And it just didn't fit that way. What I ended up doing is just kind of a little bit of a long story, I suppose, but I noticed in my life a lot of changes would occur, both very positive and negative, depending on the first 3 nights of the crescent moon. the waxing crescent moon. And so what I did is I just went into myself. I went into what resonated with me, and I ended up making an altar and incorporating a lot of different magical traditional systems, on this, and along with my own. And I ended up, doing, I guess, what would be considered moon worship, giving honor to the moon. And that was personal. That wasn't, like I said, like a system for this, or system for that. This was a very personal one-on-one system. I never heard of anything like this or read of anything like this. So it was something that I embraced, and it was very powerful to me. And then I grew up, and I did this for many years. And then at some point in my 20s, I kind of just stepped away from everything. Life happened, and it's something that kind of fell to the wayside for, I don't know, maybe about almost 10 years, I suppose. And then I started getting back into really looking at the occult, and that kind of happened in a roundabout way into magic. I was a rare book dealer for some time, where I would acquire grimoires and then pass them on to potential buyers or collectors that were looking for these particular volumes. In doing this, inevitably, I would put back a volume, or this volume, or that volume, or something I just felt like couldn't let go of. And eventually I built this massive library. And one point in my life, just things weren't really going the right way, and I was thinking, how do I navigate this? How do I get through this? And I turned around and looked at my bookshelf, and there were 100 books there that had apparently the secrets to all of creation and the universe and everything else. So I just started delving in, reading, understanding, and really got a grasp for it all. This took years. It wasn't something I did overnight. That eventually, started me into really looking at magic as an adult, looking at this system. One of my biggest problems with magic was that I couldn't, as you read in my my description, it's magic isn't magical. For my personal, what I call personal reality, my personal reality, I couldn't believe that people just said things and things happened. It just didn't resonate with me. I need more kind of concrete proof to really believe in this kind of situation. And that essentially led me looking into all right, well, we've got laws that govern our reality, and you have to get down to the base structure of that reality in order to understand how could this force work? How could this be? This led me into looking into quantum physics, and basically, once you start going down that rabbit hole, a lot becomes possible. A lot becomes tangible. There's what quantum entanglement, what Einstein considered or called spooky action at a distance, is what he had called it. And it starts, you start putting things together. Things start making sense. Looking at consciousness is something that can't be. It has to be in every equation of quantum physics. The equation of putting consciousness into that equation is something that has to be there. Without that element, nothing exists. And it just goes down. Like I said, it goes down a rabbit hole, and we could just talk about it. But anyway, this is where I started understanding and believing, all right, this does work. Consciousness does have an effect on reality around us, how we project our thoughts, our energy. Intent became key in working with magic. I learned quickly that it was your intent that was essentially the driving force behind magic. And that led into a lot of other things that I go into with evocations, or how you're setting up your ritual circle and triangle and all of this. So there's a lot that I had to go through to fully believe in the magic that I was wanting to do and doing, because without belief in what you're doing, it's completely pointless. It's not going to work. If you don't believe it because it's your reality, then it's not going to work because you don't believe it to be working. So I had to have a strong foundation where I could fully believe in how this force worked.
Well, that's strong and important to have, because to not only have the will and intent to do it, which is a strong key, but to understand how energy works with quantum physics, with metaphysics, is very important, because not only should you have a strong will and intent, but you need to understand how the energy that is coming from you and your will and intent is directing and causing manifest what you are desiring. So you have to envision that energy and how it's moving, and how it is a very vital tool that, even though unseen, is still there. And it's pulsating in the room, it's pulsating around you, and that energy and intent together are what create everything that is magic. And that it's amazing once you start to dig into the fabric of what it is, and like you said, really jump into that rabbit hole. It never ends. It goes deeper and deeper, but you also at the same time get a deeper understanding of the mechanics of it, which allow you to be able to achieve greater feats than if you didn't understand that side of it.
Absolutely, and it's interesting because it's interesting as science, ironically, is starting to catch up with some of these magical techniques or philosophies that have been around, since the beginning of man, essentially. And you'd think it would be the other way around, but as science is evolving along with occult philosophies and techniques and understanding, they both are moving together and kind of going into a singularity at some point here. We see, as an example, you look at sympathetic magic, and you've got, let's say, a piece of somebody's hair or fingernails or something, and you're using your intent, you're focusing, whether it be bane, or something positive in someone's life. You're trying to heal them, or you're trying to cause them bane, depending on how you're directing that energy, that consciousness into this piece of them. Affects them. This is wondered. Fraser wrote about this in The Golden Bough, and he just couldn't really believe in it. But we're looking at this old technique of doing this kind of magic, of affecting somebody at a distance through using a piece of their body, something that's been connected to them, that always remains to be connected to them. And we look at, like I said earlier, quantum entanglement, where you take two particles or a particle and you separate it, and whatever you do to one half of that particle, the other changes immediately, showing that there is indeed this invisible kind of connection between these things that never breaks. So we've got essentially quantum entanglement that is backing up and validifying sympathetic magic that's been around forever, that no one believed in until science finally got to the level of understanding that this does exist.
No, and that's important, like you said. I mean, and I think they've known this for a long time, and somewhere along the way with most magic, we knew much more back then than we know now, and we're starting to rediscover. I feel like with the Dark Ages and with a lot of magic being pushed back, that a lot of these things were lost. I think original practitioners who created these things knew these things. Maybe they didn't know the scientific terms to them, but they understood what scientists just now are starting to figure out, and they knew this, 1,000, 2,000 years ago.
Precisely, and like I said, I was trying to say is, that's what's funny is the science is catching up to this, hoodoo, mumbo jumbo, say, this stuff that doesn't exist, but now science has finally gotten to the place where it can now see how these principles work. And so much depends on consciousness. That's essentially what makes the world around us. What we see before us is, it doesn't really exist until we actually observe it. Something that just blew my mind away. It made everything possible. It was like a real turning point for me. Like I found the grain of truth I was after to solidify everything in my belief system. Looking at what they call the double slit experiment, where it's kind of a long process to describe, but essentially matter doesn't exist. It exists in a superposition, where it's nothing is any position until it is observed. And they prove this with this double slit experiment. What's interesting is that somehow reality knows that it's being observed, whether it be by a camera or in person. And if you look at that, I mean, just looking at that information is mind-blowing, is the fact that, it acts differently if we watch it or not. How we actually affect the reality around us is astounding. And I think that, a lot of these religions, that essentially it's to strip people of power. Get on your knees and pray for something to happen. Ask for help. These things, yes, these can, be put into practice and worked with the different elements, different beings, different spirits. But basically, that's why, magic has been pretty much banned. It's just like, you need to go to Christ, or you need to get on your knees and beg for something to have happen, whereas magic, or the magician, takes that power to themselves. They are the ones responsible for changing their realities.
And that's a big thing, and I've been saying that for a long time, that was the purpose of most, Christian beliefs, or even a lot of, Judaism, a lot of these different religions, that they maybe didn't start out that way, but over time they were able to be used as a weapon to control people, to take away their power and give the power to a idol of sorts that everyone must pray to. You must pray for mercy. You must pray for forgiveness. You must pray for this to help you, or this being to change your life and give you the things you want, rather than confirming and pushing the individual to say, you already have this power within you to do it. And that's sad, because we do have the power to move mountains with our own will and our own intent. It's just most people will never take the road to do it. I mean, I would say 9 out of 10, but that's not true. It's 10 out of 10 in most cases. It's very rare to come across a true practitioner. I mean, even in this scene, and if people will laugh at me because I have a show on magic, I appeal to the magic scene. That's great, but I also will bash the magic scene at the same time when I say that there's a lot of talk and not a lot of action. A lot of people say about the magic they're doing, but they're still the same as the person sitting in a pew at church on Sunday. They're not really accomplishing anything until you step into the circle, until you start learning to do it for yourself, and you spend hours staring at a wall blankly and nothing happens until it finally does. You can't call yourself a practitioner, but you can talk about it. You can pretend to be. And that there's a lot of that going on, but you have the power to do it. You just got to do it. And people won't. People will find that to be a mockery. That's silly. That's, you're against our religion. That's, you're a devil worshiper. You're this. No, we are the original. We are the source that was around before your book of lies came out to take your own power. You're worshiping a thing that takes your power from you rather than gaining your power back. And that's sad. It's sad.
Yeah, a lot of people want to label me a black magician, Luciferian, Satanist, this and that. I mean, I would technically be considered a chaos magician, and I'm happy with that. But essentially, personally, I see myself as a seeker of truth without restraint, and that's dogmatic restraint, or restraint that's been handed down to us through conditioning through our society. Breaking the bonds of getting out of the box, essentially, and looking at things in a different way. I look for truth. I'm not just dark or just this or that. And so many people want to be put into these categories, into these boxes. And so, I see a lot of people come to me and they say, I'm a devil worshiper. I worship Satan. I worship this and that. And to each their own. That's the beauty of this. There's no place for me to say you're doing something wrong or this isn't right. However, I will say that, getting on your knees to one entity is no different than getting on your knees to another entity. I mean, it depends on how, what that means to you. But it's like you may as well stay a Christian if you're still doing the same thing with a different, replacing one entity with another.
Agreed.
And a lot of people have no idea what that is. I mean, again, though, it's personalized. It's what does lifetime path mean to you? To me, personally, this is about freedom. This is about breaking, as I said, dogmatic chains or conditioning of reality that has been imposed upon us, and taking back this power for ourselves, being able to understand the technology and the power that we have. And utilize it to change the base structure of reality around us for our benefit. This is a lot easier said than done, but this is the idea behind it. And it's not about, everybody's like, it's about hurting kids, or it's about killing animals, or it's about, doing evil for the sake of being evil. This is ignorance.
It's pure ignorance.
People believe that, I'm against Christianity, well, I must be against good, or I must be, against anything that they stand for. And, being in my position, being a seeker of truth without loyalty to this or that, or being put into a box of this, you're able to study everything. And I think that's really important. If you're going to study one thing, you should know the whole picture, see the whole picture, study the other half. Look into this so you understand the dynamics, you understand how this works, you understand the principles and the underlying philosophies of this whole situation. Don't limit yourself to only reading black magic books or something. My areas of study are just vast. I incorporate a lot of different, I read a lot of different philosophies, incorporate a lot of different philosophies into my own personal understanding of reality, or what magic is. So it's, don't limit yourself to one train of thought, or, if I do this, that's against that or that. You have to follow your own instincts. You have to trust yourself. Learning is never a bad thing. It doesn't matter what it is. I mean, if you look at things, look at the Grimoire of Abramelin the Mage. This is written from a right-hand path, essentially, perspective, how to work with demons, yes, but not from a left-hand path perspective. But yet we study that. Same thing with the Greater Key of Solomon, or Le Dragon Rouge. So it's like any of these older grimoires that are dealing with satanic entities, or I shouldn't say satanic, but dark entities, are written from a right-hand path perspective. And so it's interesting to see this kind of age that's what we're coming into, what we have for the last, maybe 30 years, really coming into taking this information and writing books from a different perspective and putting this, is power and this energy into the left-hand path. But it's all about a personal journey. It's all about yourself. You can ask 15 magicians how to do something, and you're going to get 15 different answers. And that's the beauty of it, is it comes down to yourself. It comes down to your instincts. Even with the systems of magic that I put out, I urge people to use it as a template and add their own personal elements to it. Don't do my magic, do your magic. Because your magic is the only thing that's going to work. I can read about how to do somebody else's magic and do it, step by step. But if it doesn't feel like mine, if it feels like I'm doing somebody else's magic, then it's pointless. This has to be your own system. You have to take any system that you read about that you really want to incorporate in your life and make it your own. Really feel it, And it's such a vital personal journey that we go through with this.
Well, it is, and I mean, you nailed it on the head, because these books and most of these grimoires were written originally from a right-hand perspective. I mean, let's go to the one that seems like everyone starts out with, or at least is talked about more than anything, is the Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon. This was written from a perspective definitely of right hand, because he was building the Temple of Jerusalem. I mean, he was constraining these demons to build this holy temple. And years later, we flipped it to a left-hand perspective of being able to use it for our own personal gain, which, I mean, he did as well, but he did it in the name of God. We're doing it in the name of ourselves. It just shows, though, if it was only being able to be used one way, then when a left-hand magician tries to use it, it would do no good. But it does work. And you have to make it your own. I mean, I started out... Well, I shouldn't say I started out. I started out originally just kind of going off of a whim. I mean, I guess you could call that a little bit of a chaos side, mixed with some Satanism when I very first started out at 17 doing rituals. And then years later, when I came back with more of a constructed, this form of magic, I went into the Goetia and I started doing it that way. But I left certain things out. I didn't feel that I needed to do things and consecrate them under the certain type of astral bodies at a certain time of the day. Did I do things similar? Yes, absolutely. But I didn't follow it word for word for word. And I know there's certain magicians out there that would just, that's ridiculous, it must be followed exactly. And that's fine if you're that traditional. But I have got tremendous success from doing my own forms. And as you said, you have to do what resonates with you, because that's what resonates with you. You can sit and do that other form, word for word, and it not work. You change a couple small things that seem to feel right to you, and all of a sudden, boom, the gates are opened. And it's because you have to follow what you feel and what is going to allow your will to be released properly. Because if it doesn't feel right to you, then you're not going to be fully open to do it.
No, exactly. And that's the thing. If you're doing something and it's working for you, nobody can tell you that you're doing your magic incorrectly. This is a personal path, a one-person path. Everybody's going to get there a different way. But, this ties back into consciousness. This ties back into all, the founding structure of everything. It comes down to your personal reality. It comes down to your perspective, how you're viewing reality around you, how you're putting your intent out there and focusing your power. So, if it works for somebody else, that's fine, but your way also can work the way you need it to, I can't say, the guy that wrote the Goetia was incorrect if I didn't get the same result. But if I do things, maybe that worked for him. Great. I can take these elements, these scientific kinds of constructs, and apply them to my own system, working with the same entities, and get success from it because I'm doing it my way. And that's really, really important. I feel magic books essentially as guidelines or a guide system to ultimately being your own. Follow the guidelines, look at the suggestions, but you have to be able to bring it down into yourself and work on your own.
You do, because, you can read a book on how to climb a mountain, but it isn't going to tell you where to put your hands and feet on each step. So, you have to kind of figure that path out for yourself along the way. It is an outline to tell you, this is what worked for me. This is what I suggest to work for you. But once again, I think that some of it was hidden in obscurity, too, that some of the terms were put in there purposely as false flags. Some of it was put in there to have other meanings that they didn't want to talk about or write about at the time. So right then and there, it should tell you, okay, some of these things probably could be taken out. Some of these things might mean something completely different. I got to be honest with you. I've had tremendous success in my workings, but never once have I murdered a goat and during one of my rituals, right. Which if you read the Grimoire or the Grimoire Verum, it says to slice the throat of the kid, to slice the throat of the goat and to make the circle out of its flesh. I've never done that, but I'll tell you what, I've had some pretty extraordinary things happen. Maybe It would be even more powerful if I did that, but it's just not my style. So it's you got to do it on your own terms. And there are no rules. Like you said, there shouldn't be one path. Do I resonate with Satanism and the left-hand path? Absolutely. But unlike the left-hand path, I still work heavily with Enochian magic and angels. And I know a lot of people that I travel in circles with will be like, oh, I can't believe you do that. It should be one direction or the other. Well, you know what? Do you, buddy. I'll do me, because I still have phenomenal experiences and encounters with angelic forces that the energy is so different than the demonic energy, and I love them both. I'm a junkie for both of them. I feed off of both of them, and I can't get enough. So you just got to do what resonates with you. And that actually brings me to one of my next questions is, when do you think, what age or, what time period did you have your first just whoa moment? That it worked the way that you wanted it to, and you were like, holy shit.
I had said when I came back in to magic, looking at as an adult, looking at the whole situation and reading book. That's one trap I will interject here and say is one trap you'll fall into when you're getting into trying to understand this field is you'll read a book and then you read another book and you read it and I got to read that next book. I got to understand that more and that more and that more. And you keep reading books and you start thinking, well, when am I going to actually going to do this, Yeah. And there just has to be a point where you feel like you know enough, and you just kind of have to jump. It's that jump from the plane, You just got to jump out and see what happens. At some point, a lot of people don't do that. It's a big blockage for them. They don't
Major
feel like
blockage.
they know enough, right? But you can get more out of doing a ritual than actually reading about a ritual. You just don't understand it until you actually perform it. Like you said, there's a lot of armchair magicians that talk about knowing this and that, but they've never gotten into the circle themselves to experience it. But to get back to your question, it's like when I had read enough, I actually started working with the Simon Necronomicon, which has got plenty of controversy around it as well. These beings don't exist, or they do, which brings us into egregores if you wanted to go that direction. But regardless of how you want to look at it, I started doing the triangles, circles, putting down what I knew and understood. And I had some people that were trying to get into my house. Essentially, they were wanting to show the house before I wanted to move out, and that really interrupted my personal space. I don't like getting a phone call and asking if someone can come walk through my house in 20 minutes or something. So I had done a rite to stop that. And there is no reason for this. There's absolutely, it's not just coincidence to me. There's no reason they would stop showing the house. They're trying to sell it. And the next day I got a phone call saying that they wouldn't be showing anybody the house anymore. And that was kind of like a wake up. Wow, this is really powerful. This is working. This isn't coincidence.
Absolutely.
And there was no explanation for it. And that was just kind of one of the things that had occurred along when I first began doing this, where I'm seeing these results, and a lot of people will say, "Oh, it's coincidence." But when the coincidences rack up, you start to actually see a pattern of how you're affecting things around you. So that was kind of one of the things that really brought me into understanding, like, these spirits, these energies or intelligences, whatever you'd like to just call them, are out there. They are listening. My will is being put into place. My intent is being put into place, and with miraculous effect almost. I don't like the word miraculous. I shouldn't have used it, but like it just seems something quite amazing when you do something and you immediately see an effect from it that you're after.
And no one can tell you that it's not happening. Like you said, people will be like, "Oh, it's just coincidence." It doesn't matter if they believe that. Whenever something like that happens, and the next day when you got that phone call, you sat there and was like, "Holy shit!" Like,
right.
It worked, and it don't matter if 10 people told you, "Nope, that didn't happen that way." It's just your mind. It does. They can't take that away from you. You know in your heart that that's what happened.
Yeah, exactly. There's no question or shadow of a doubt. But see, that's a very personal experience. Regardless of who believes you or not, or if they can rack it off, chalk it off as coincidence or not. It's about your path. It's about your belief in what you're doing, and the more you have that, the more you see result. So
it reminds me of a story. I summoned Asmodee, who's my patron dame, and I work with him quite heavily. But it was at the beginning of our journey together, and it's known that he doesn't like water, and I know a lot of people would say that's just coincidence, but when I summoned him and did the first full invocation, I felt his presence so heavily in my ritual chamber as it just descended upon me. I felt it. It's the second that I felt his energy, I heard and felt this massive groaning under my feet through the water pipes of my house, and then I heard and I didn't know what the hell it was, but I wanted to stay focused. So even though I thought maybe my water pipes just exploded in my house, I'm like, damn it, I'm finishing this ritual. So I finished it.
Right.
About a half an hour later, I come out and I go into the bathroom and wash my hands because I had been dealing with a lot of dragon blood incense, and I wanted to get off my hands. And when I went to turn the water on, it wouldn't work. And I'm like, uh-oh. Maybe it did actually blow my water pipes out, and I was like mind blown. Well, I ended up calling the water company, and they said a massive water line just exploded down the street from my house. But it was literally the second that I felt his presence come into my ritual chamber, I heard the ooh, boom, and it exploded. And no matter what anybody would ever tell me about that, I know for a damn fact that's what caused it. And it was crazy. It was just one of those experiences that'll stick with you forever that, like you said, it's personal. And that was an affirmation for me that, like, wow, okay.
And that's something you believe, that you could tell people all day long that story, and no one, it's just coincidence, or,
Yep.
So it really comes down to you and your belief in your reality. There's some dogmas that you kind of have to be broken down in order to actually perform magic that a lot of people that I do consultations with have a problem with. And there's a couple of them, like I said, and one of them is breaking the dogma of the reality we live in, that we can't do this or we can't do that, or we don't have the ability to change things, or these things that have been conditioned upon us. You start going into quantum physics, and you realize that we're in an energy field, and thought and will and intent moves this stuff into the ways we want to, how much we can control. But there's these blockages of what we're able to do. And again, I think, touching back on the whole organized religion situation, I think it's something that was put into place to strip people of their power. It's getting them over that hurdle is one. Another one is religious dogma is very, very hard to break in a lot of people, or get rid of. It was something I struggled with, actually, from my Orthodox Catholic Christian views or Judeo-Christian views, growing up, being conditioned that way. It's like, oh, if I do this, I'm a bad person. I feel bad. This is a negative thing to me. Though at the same time, there's something in them that wants to do it. It feels like it's right, but they've been conditioned to think that it's bad. These conditionings are very difficult. But once you get over them, this is why it's so important for me to understand the mechanics behind how magic works. Once you get past this stuff, you really understand how it works and how it can be implemented into your life. Start seeing the structure of Orthodox religion as what it is, and there's a lot of good things, from all religions, but there's also a lot of control, and you have to kind of weed that out and look at these things. So it's it's a very complex and yet simplistic art, for sure.
Well, and the thing, you just nailed it, is I don't think a lot of people realize that. They'll turn from their original born faith of Christianity or Catholicism or Judaism or whatever it might be, and they start to follow a magic or a darker path, let's call it, and they feel like in their own mind they've broken the dogma of the religion, and now they're into the magic, they're into the left-hand path. Here's where the problem lies. Is even though you think you believe yourself that you've beat the bonds of that original upbringing, there a lot of times is an energy blockage invisible to your eye that'll lie there, and it'll stop you, and you'll perform ritual after ritual after ritual with no result at all. And you're like, what the hell is going on? I keep talking to people, it's working for them, it's not working for me, I've dispelled my religion, but yet it's still not working. It's because you still have this invisible blockage or barrier that is there, and you have to get rid of that. That is essential. If you do not break that wall down, that water will remain trapped there forever. Once you break it and let the flow happen, it is amazing what will happen. I had to do that for myself. I was so stuck for a long time that I could not break that barrier, and I had to perform certain rituals to dispel my original dogmatic faith, to pretty much do an unholy baptism, so to speak, of myself. And it was almost like a storm washed over me, and then the next time I picked up my tools, stood in the circle, and performed a ritual, it was a night and day difference. It was boom, there I am. There's the hidden freighter crow that's always been there that hasn't been able to come out until now, because there was something holding me back, almost like a last-ditch effort of the roots holding on, not wanting to let me go from that path. And I had to cut them free. And when I did, it was tremendous. And anybody listening out there, if you're having those problems, it's because those roots are still clung to you. You have to pry those little fuckers out. And once you do, amazing things will happen.
You have to do a lot of soul searching in that situation. As you said, I've had a lot of people come to me, and like your own situation, my own situation, where they're stuck on this religious dogma, and they've come to me and said, like you described, I'm doing these rituals, I'm doing these workings, and I'm not getting result. And you have to really ask them, well, do you still have hesitation? Is there something in you? Really look at yourself, really be honest. Is there something in you holding you back? And generally the answer will be yes. There's still something in the back of their minds that is preventing them. And like I said earlier, if you're not all in, if your intent isn't completely focused, if you don't completely believe in what you're doing, it's not going to work. So you have to really do an inventory or a self-assessment of yourself, really do some soul searching and look at these things and what is holding you back personally, because it's only the restraints we put upon ourselves, essentially. Some people, they're not able to get past it. I've had people that just cannot shake the dogma of their religion or what they grew up with to get to that point.
I think it's a lot of people, actually.
It's very difficult to break these kinds of these thought patterns or these conditionings.
I think the number one hindrance for people is hesitation, as you said, but I think it's also fear, because people will go in and want to call upon a powerful force, but they're still scared of it in some sense, and that fear will cause it not to work.
Right.
When I step inside the circle, each and every time, I am willing to die that night. I am willing to stand there, and if that thing shows up and somehow it goes wrong and it just tears me limb from limb, if it destroys me and folds me inside out, then so be it. I don't want that to happen. But I'm knowing when I'm calling upon something that's 100 million times more powerful than I am, in that sense. I mean, obviously, you were helping direct that power, and you were more powerful than you know, but when you're calling something there, you have to be willing to go all in. I mean, there's no barriers, there's no fear, there's no hesitation. You go in as a warrior, as a true sorcerer, and you stand there and you direct that will, then things will happen. But when you stand there and you shy away from it and you look scared, there is many people I've talked to that said that they've actually had encounters where they were pretty much laughed at by forces that they brought here, because they're trying to demand and control a force that you can obviously tell they don't even control themselves, let alone another force. So you have to be able to, master yourself before you can try to master some of these other things. So you have to break down those barriers, folks. So real quick, I want to jump into a couple of these comments. We've got some comments flying in. We have the Telemancer joining us tonight. What's up, brother? He put, I am really loving this. Glad you are doing it. It is clear as a bell on my end. We are glad to hear that. We have Tracy Throwbridge on the line as well. She put, loving the show, loving what we're doing. A really cool comment here, folks, is I had mentioned about Asmodee bursting the water pipes, and Destiny Ray said that that actually happened to her when she summoned Asmodee as well. The water pipes in her own home exploded directly under the room she was in and under her altar, and it flooded the entire bottom portion of her house. So that's pretty wild to hear, honestly. That right there is my affirmation of what I needed. It said, during the ritual, I felt him come in and rumble, rumble, boom. Checked after ritual, and there was 3 inches of water down there. I have goosebumps hearing this. That is crazy, Destiny. I mean, that right there just gave me mental wood, because to know that someone else experienced the same thing as me is absolutely awesome. So, Asmodee, we would ask that you don't break our water pipes when we call you.
Indeed.
And then, so what we're going to do, folks, real quick, I'm going to go to a quick commercial break. We're going to talk about one of our 2 sponsors, make sure I get a chance to fit that in. So we'll be right back in just a moment here on Knights of the Nephilim. But I do want to jump into a little bit of one of our sponsors tonight. And first and foremost, that is Limitless Liberation. And I'm going to read it from the perspective of the owner, Elena. And she says that Limitless Liberation was inspired by both Lucifer and Belial. Lucifer has been with me most of my life, as far back as I can remember. Belial, I started to work with when I was going through a very difficult part of my life. He completely turned mine and my family's life around for the better in a very short period of time. In return, he asked me to create Charger for him. He showed me the design, so I created the first Charger for Belial, and Lucifer wanted one next. From there, I had spirits lining up with requests for magical items. Some are control freaks, others will just inspire. They are all so individually different, but every single item created has power within it. Each item operates on many levels. They operate as an anchor for the spirit you're working with, thus aiding easier connection between the two of you. They also operate like a power cell or battery, where they already come with an inherent energy to them, but they become stronger as you feed them and pull from them during the ritual, as well as to strengthen your workings. Limitless Liberation continues to grow to honor the spirits we love to work with and build relationships with. And I certainly stand by that. If you have seen her work, It is gorgeous. There is power that emanates from it, and we are working on a special project coming up together for something for my altar, as I said, for my patron daemon, which is Asmodee. So we'll be making something very, very amazing for him coming up. I'll share that as things come along, and you can check out her and her work on Etsy, and that is at www.etsy.com/shop/limitless liberation. And one more time, that's etsy.com/shop/limitless liberation. So make sure you check her out and support her work, because it is phenomenal. I think you'll love it as much as I do, and you can definitely pick up something for your workings and for your altar, and it'll supercharge your work, allowing for more success. And hey, it might even knock down one of those blockages we talked about a little bit ago. All right, folks, we are back with Espen Qayin here. We just want to take a short mini break just to go ahead and tell you a little bit about one of our sponsors, like I said. And we've been having some great conversations for the last 50 minutes. We got a little bit of time to go on the show. And there's some other things I wanted to bring up. You know, you had come from obviously a diverse background of working with a lot of different forms of magic, as you said, starting out with Celtic magic, going to chaos magic, dabbling in the Satanism side, working with a lot of different forces. We'll be jumping into your books here in a moment. We'll start talking about some of the jinn forces and some of the other forces that you work with. But why don't you tell us a little bit about you getting in and heading the Inner Order of the Voltec? How did that all come about?
That was a strange kind of situation. That was right when I was putting out my very first book, Volabilis Ex Chaosium, which actually ended up being incorporated into an expanded edition called the Black Book of Azathoth later down the line. But the Order of Voltec was interesting, is they believed in a lot of concepts from Carlos Castaneda and Don Juan, which was on the mandatory reading list that they had, or suggested reading list, really. It was an interesting journey. It was weird how I got in contact with them. They just happened to be a group that was into Lovecraftian reality shifting, and it just completely, was parallel to what my beliefs essentially, as well as things I was working on at the time. And started looking into them and applied for membership, which I was accepted as. Once there, I went through the ranks up into what's known as third degree Fansigar, Order of the Bloody Tongue, and then was actually in that head of the Inner Order. Now, that's not head of the whole complete order. I wasn't the main person there. But I was working in the Inner Order and structuring that or working on that situation. The Voltec is not something that's out there. It's not, and this goes back to the teachings of Don Juan of self-importance, so it's really putting yourself out there and whatnot. That's difficult to incorporate when you are a public figure, so they kind of clash in that way. But really into Lovecraftian reality shifting, working with their own kinds of entities as well. So it's not for everybody. But the thing, I've never been part of an order. I never was. Am not now. But I didn't have to change myself to align with my beliefs with theirs. I didn't have to alter anything. It was already a perfect fit for me to be part of this. So it was kind of like coming home in a way. Finding other people that have these same kinds of ideas and thoughts about reality and entities and whatnot. Shifting consciousness is a big point. Working with Voltec energies and working with that kind of belief system. So, again, a lot comes back to Don Juan and Carlos Castaneda. Again, a lot of controversy over that if anybody gets into it. But,
I love it. I'm a huge fan of everything that Castaneda had released in all of his stories of Don Juan. What a character that guy was.
Oh, it's amazing. What's important about knowledge is, I was saying this to a friend the other day, is that sometimes the source, did Don Juan exist? Did Carlos actually have these experiences? There's been controversy over it. No, he was in the library at this time. He said he was in the desert having a, spiritual experience or, whatnot. But if you can remove the source from the information, as an example, sometimes teachings exist on their own. Sometimes information is meant to come through on its own through a source. But even if the source, let's say he never left the library. Maybe he made it all up in his head. Regardless of that, is the information valid? Can you apply it to your life? Is this something powerful that you can work with in your own personal belief system? Take that. Don't wash it all out because let's say he was in the library the whole time and made it up. Does it make the information any less valid if it works for you? So it's interesting. I've had people that have taught things and different things, but they themselves don't believe it. But are their teachings valid? And that's something that you have to kind of measure on your own and see if that works for you. But a lot of amazing stuff came out of Carlos Castaneda's personally his works that he put out. It's not for everybody. It takes a lot of understanding, but it's about looking at the reality around us, consciousness, and how we affect it. So a lot of weight or influence comes from that Lovecraft Castaneda for the Voltec idea or idealization of magic.
And that's actually funny that you brought it together in that form, because I was going to ask you about both of those, of how much of an influence. I didn't realize that the Inner Order of the Voltec was so associated with those two, but I was going to ask you how much of a role that Lovecraft and Castaneda's work had played in your personal path. But obviously we just heard that it played quite a lot, and I like what you said there, that whether it happened or not, on either side, because there's a lot of people that give controversy on Lovecraft work too. On either side, it doesn't matter necessarily if it was reality, because it caused for great growth in a lot of practitioners. I know personally, reading Castaneda's work had changed my life. It truly did. Hearing the stories of objects of power, and hearing him talk about these things that you're like, an object of power? Oh, yes, Carlos, that's an object of power, but you must not have seen it. And you start to read into it, and you're like, what the hell is this crazy bastard talking about? But as the story goes on, and he obviously was a character, him and Don Juanero, both of them, the way that they perform their magic, it's very possible and can very well be done, whether it actually happened to him or if something in his mind. Master sorcery, and I know it certainly fascinated me and just pushed me harder and harder in the ritual chamber and in meditation to discover myself, to say, you know what, we know nothing. Everything that we see on a physical eye is just a mere shadow of what's really there. And the more and more you dig in, the more layers like an onion that you peel back. Like you said, it doesn't matter if it's real or not, because if it caused me to do that, even from a false story, to me it makes no difference.
It really shouldn't. I would ask you, if you found out that it was all made up, you say these teachings, these understanding changed your life, would you take that all back? Would that undo all that?
And it wouldn't. No, not at all. And that's what I love about it. Is honestly, I'm not even going to lie to you. I've read hundreds of books, and one of my favorite workings, I can never say the damn name, but Journey to yeah, that I can never say that damn name. That is one of my favorite books of all time that I've ever read, ever. So even like I said, if someone were to say, you know what, you realize that was all fake, I would say, you know what, I don't give a shit, because it changed my life forever. It really did a number on my mind.
Right. Yeah, Ixalan actually ends up being a place you can never get back to, because you've already journeyed, you've already changed on your path. You can't go back to the way it was before. Ixalan is a place that exists but cannot be obtained again because you've surpassed it now.
And it makes, at the end of that, when they explained that, that was just, it blew my mind in many different directions, because, I've left it, but I can never go back, like you said, because the person who left is not the person returning. And it talks about how it is a lonely journey. And I got to be honest, folks, if you're a true practitioner of magic, I don't know about you, but it is a very lonely path. Don't matter if you have a wife and kids. It don't matter if you have a ton of friends. If you're a popular person, it makes no difference, because once you cross a certain threshold in the magical kingdom, you realize that you are 100% alone. And it's a hard thing to cope with, and even still, I go through pockets of it where it's almost depressing to a sense. But you have to keep pushing forward. But yes, you will find a point where you can never return back to who you were or where you were from, because what you were and where you were from doesn't even exist anymore.
Nope.
Crazy shit. Now, I want to ask you a question. I want to ask you a question. So, obviously, being with the Inner Order of the Voltec and them being based off of the Temple of Set, which would be more of the Aquino side, but being based off of the Church of Satan, which would be more LaVey side, there's always the controversy. I always see a lot of topics of people saying, who would you pick, LaVey, Aquino, or Crawley? As far as those three, which do you think personally, and I know there's a lot of other great names as well, but out of those three popular, often talked about names, who would you pick out of the three to be the biggest influence on you from their personal work?
LaVey, I like a lot of it because it brings one into their own personal power. They realize I am important. The most sacred day is their birthday, within the Satanic Church beliefs. Taking power for yourself, that's really important to really come up, and I think that helps break a lot of the religious dogma that, like we talked about. Crowley, and a lot of people would disagree with this, but he was really a white magician, which is fine. Like I said, a lot of people different paths. Both of them, though, I say that there's things I don't necessarily agree with. As an example, with Satanism, it's indulgence. I'm going to eat the whole cake. I'm going to do whatever I want. I'm going to turn the music all the way up. I'm going to do whatever I want in full indulgence. There's chaos that ensues with that situation. There's no structure to where one can really move forward. And this is just from my personal perspective. This is my personal view. There needs to be some kind of limitation, self-imposed, not by some religious group or system, but your own. You have to realize, all right, if I do this all the time, there's going to be problems, and so that and do it that well is the whole of the law. These things, they have a lot of truth to them. You have to, again, it kind of talks about, Crowley's do it that well, is breaking, again, when I talked about breaking the dogma of reality, breaking the dogma of religion, doing what you need to do to find who you are. And that's really, really important to do without these restraints, without these pressures from friends or family or organizations or society to what do you want to do? How do you want to react to this? These things play off of each other from Crowley and LaVey. They're very important to find the self, to find the power within the self. But again, I do believe that there would be, within reason of these things. So it's for the individual to know. There's no guideline set in stone with that. So I would have to say, more Temple of Set, I suppose, if I had to choose out of the three, with kind of a train of thought. I do, see, also Satanism doesn't, it's funny, I'm a Satan worshiper, I'm a Satanist, but Satanism doesn't even believe in Satan. They don't believe in an actual entity, which is, one of the reasons why the Temple of Set broke away, is they believed in an actual entity, and so there was a big conflict there. And, they saw, the Temple of Set saw these beings as actually being real and not just pieces of our own psyche or whatnot. So I do believe in entities. I've seen entities. I've experienced them, and there's no question in my mind whatsoever. So I tend to lean that way. If I had to choose out of the three.
I'm the same, because like you said, LaVey and Crawley both had talked about it being different flows and currents within yourself compared to it being a theistic standpoint of there actually being entities. And I can tell you what, I'm an interesting guy. I got a great imagination. I got a lot of power within me, but I don't think the things that I've seen have come from me. They might have been sparked by my will, but they sure as hell weren't a part of me, because I'm like, you know what, that is way beyond anything that's coming out of me or my life force. So, no, I'm definitely with you with Aquino and the Temple of Set being the one out of the three, though both of the others certainly had a heavy influence. LaVey is where I started out. I started out with LaVey, as most did. As a teenage, rebel devil worshiper, wearing all black, being a badass, and it kind of changed into more of a theistic and intelligent standpoint. Crawley, I love his work. It's just brutal. Some of his books are like, it's like a nail to the brain trying to get through it and decipher it. I love his work. It's just really, really, really thick.
I'm so glad you said that. I have found the same thing. Reading through it, you read a passage and you're like, what the fuck did I just read?
You read it like 6 times and you're like, I still don't know what the hell this dude's talking about. And I know I'll be crucified for that. The occult community is going to burn me because everybody worships Crawley. And I'm going to be honest, folks, he was a genius, but at the same time, he was batshit crazy. I'm sorry, but that's the truth of the matter. Now, let's take a look. I want to jump in so we don't run out of time. So we still have about 25 minutes left, but I want to jump into the bread and butter of this interview. We got to know you a little bit, got to hear about some of your thought patterns and things that you've been a part of, but now I want to talk about your work specifically. You've released some phenomenal works. I mean, first and foremost on my list of the several books that you've put out is the Book of Smokeless Fire, which I was telling you earlier, unfortunately, was stolen from me. I had left my car unlocked, and I stole a bunch of shit, which is weird because what's the chance of someone, robbing your car and then wanting that? Right. You know what I mean? Like, for all I know, it was a black magician of some sort out there summoning jinn, and having a hell of a time. And they're loving life right now. They accidentally stole that, and they're like, this is great.
Right.
But it was probably just a random grab, which was a shame, so I don't have that one anymore. But how did you get into working? I mean, you've now not only put out the Book of Smokeless Fire, but you've also recently, which we'll talk about in a moment, put out the Book of Smokeless Fire 2, Into the Crucible. These books talk about working with the jinn forces that I think are often overlooked in the occult realm, that even people who do a lot of daemon summoning don't talk about the other side of that and really bring up the jinn. So what is your thoughts on that? What got you into this work, and what have your experiences been?
It wasn't planned. It's really an interesting situation. I was actually doing a follow-up to Volabilis Ex Chaosium. I was focusing on Nyarlathotep and wanting to do a grimoire based just on him and dealings with him and working with him, and looking to expand on this. I was looking into a lot of entities from around the world. I was looking at a lot of Middle Eastern entities, and what came across, I started doing research into the jinn, looking at the jinn, and I came across a book called the Book of Deadly Names, and I realized what I was reading. I realized what I had in my hands was actually, and the story behind it is absolutely amazing. But I realized I had an English translated account of King Solomon working with these jinn, and no system had ever been created. There was no triangles, there's no circles, there's no evocations, there's nothing. There's only, it follows essentially the Testament of Solomon. So there was only, but the beings were replaced with other entities in the Testament of Solomon. But these were the original jinn in the brass container. They are very different from Goetic spirits. But I started. This is how. See, I can just go off on tangents. But it started looking into that, reading that, and understanding that, and realizing that this manuscript really needed to be put out in a way that was usable, and this information to be spread worldwide. Essentially, this was very valuable, and no one had done this. I realized that this weight, this almost a burden, if you will, was laid on to me to do this, and I saw this. I was in a very angry, betrayed, really I say angry state, because of a lot of betrayal in my life. I believe that that the book came into my hands for a reason. I believe that the jinn were there, and they came to me as an author and magician, and had me put this work forth so that they would be able to be utilized and worked with in a modern setting, because they hadn't been worked with in 1,000 years, if even then, other than King Solomon. I know of no other account of these jinn that exist. It was in a manuscript called Miscellanea de Solomon, and I just, like I said, when I was reading this book, I realized what my task was. I realized that, but it was tremendous a task. It was tremendous because I had to come up with whole systems of evocation. In that book, 72 sigils is an insane amount of things to sigils to sit in your temple and draw out, and it's like I would get partial images within my mind and draw them down, and then they would create themselves. As I said before in my books or in other writings, I don't believe I created these things, but was a medium for this information to come through. Some of the triangles that I look at in these books, I think there's no way I could have drawn something like this. It's just geometrically, like I said, I could say it's amazing because I didn't say that I did it. So I look at these things, they blow my mind. And like I said, I think that these things they came through me at the right time to put this information out. Now, a lot of people say this about a lot of different books, especially in black magic. This is very dangerous. This is a very dangerous system. I don't say this lightly. This is a field, even though I just put my last book out with the Jinn, I don't find a reason to go back to working with them. It's something that I went through, something that is very, very strong, very, very powerful, very, very dark. A lot of bad things happened in my life working with these energies, and even recently with this last book, I've had tremendous, bad luck, I guess, if you'd say, working with this. So it's a chapter I'm happy to be done with. I'm glad the information's out. I'm glad that energy's out there, as I was obviously meant to put it out there. But personally, just anybody who's considering working with this stuff, really, really know your stuff and understand how potent and how dark and powerful this magic is. Unlike the Goetia and the spirits within the Goetia, they're not there to help you unlock doors or find your lost love or things like this. And not all Goetic spirits are this way, but there's a lot of them that are there to offer services that are helpful to humanity. The Jinn in this book of the tribe of the Ta'al are nothing but sinister. They're about pain, misery, death, and that's it, And so there's a very fine line the magician has to walk when working with them, and delving into that world, which is where Smokeless Fire 2 comes up a little bit more, as kind of initiating yourself more into that current. But it's very, very strong. I've had people come back to me years later, I didn't take it seriously that this was powerful or that this was dark, and I've got all this stuff happening in my life, So it's like you have to be really careful and really understand that this is a very, very dangerous book, this system of magic. So it's kind of like having a nuclear bomb in your hands or a lot of old dynamite that you don't want to shake, because it's very, very volatile. You can use it if you need to use it, but you need to really have a good reason, not like somebody cut you off in traffic, but something really horrible somebody did to somebody you love or you did to yourself to utilize something like this.
Yeah, this is when you need to pull out the big guns. I mean, if you can't get it from your regular means, this would be when to dive into these forces. But you answered the second part of my question already without me having to ask it, which is great, which was going to be, what warnings would you give to someone that's traveling down the path of working with the Jinn forces? And you already answered that, which is great. I mean, this is not something to be taken lightly, folks, because I got to be honest with you. I've been doing practitioner work for quite a long time, and I have read some of Qayin's work on these matters, and it scares the shit out of me. And I don't say that lightly, and it's not often you will hear me say that. And I steered away. I haven't dabbled in his work. I read it. I admire it, but I'm like, fuck it. I ain't messing with this. And I've messed with a lot of crazy stuff. So the Jinn are pure chaos. They are not meant to be your buddy. It's not you're calling your patron spirit to work with on a daily basis and hang out with and get to know. This isn't that. This is something different. If you know the background stories of Jinn forces, they never were meant to be something that likes you or wants to work with you. They are chaos controlled to a sense. When you open that bottle, that brass container, you are letting out chaos.
It's like I said, walking on on eggshells. It's a very delicate relationship between the magician and the Jinn. And it's not saying all Jinn. This is just this particular tribe.
Specific sex of them, yeah.
Right. And it's like coming in as a warrior to be respected. You come in into the ritual with a sword, and that is to show them like they are warriors, you are a warrior too. And by working with them, they work with you, but it's kind of the enemy of my enemy situation. They have their own purposes to do things. They'll work with you to fulfill their own goals. They'll just as easily slay you. So it's a very precarious situation. Don't do this to see if something happens. In other words, be well versed in magic and spirits before just picking this up and trying to see if something happens if you do the workings the right way.
We do have a comment from a listener right now saying, smokeless fire has been a staple in my recent works. My abuser can never get anywhere near me again. I love his work. My literal life, man. Well, much love to you, Destiny, for it resonating with you. Obviously, I'm sure Kayin's really, happy to hear that. In a case like this, if there was someone who's done you incredible injustice and you can't find that in other spirits, these are good forces to use. So, use with care, use with caution, but use mercilessly if you have to. I mean, I'm always the one to say that. And if you're going to step across and use that baneful side of things, you better use it with the absolute utmost fury and feel no remorse to make sure that it's done right. But it should be on specific things, as you had just mentioned. So, no, that's great. Now, I know we're starting to run a little short on time, so the way I would like to wrap this up, I'm going to go into a commercial break here in a minute, but I know that you had just released the Book of Smokeless Fire 2, as we just kind of touched base on, but you've also released a few other new works that have now either been past works revisited and put out on paperback. Some of them have been a collection of your writings. Why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the new things that have come out that your fans or new fans to you can now check out?
Yeah, that'd be great. I've recently just kind of had an explosion of creativity and just wanted to really get some stuff out there. I had put out, as we talked about, Smokeless Fire 2 Into the Crucible is now available in softcover. It's also available in hardcover and deluxe through Edgar Kervel, Sirius Publishing. So you can pick those up still. I suggest you do. Usually aftermarket prices go pretty high on some of the stuff. But there is also the paperback version of that and also Kindle. So it's available, across a lot of different medias to access. But there's also the collected writings, and Arrest Ben K and the Collected Writings is the title. And that takes all of my published work, like different articles in different occult journals, and puts them all into one book, which is nice. It's all easily accessible. A lot of this stuff has been sold out or limited or, extremely high prices to get a hold of, anything. So I take all those pieces and put them into one book. That's available on Kindle as well. So that's an option. But that's really cool. I really love going through that book because all the different pieces that are in there cover so many different subjects, down to the mechanics of magic down to, zombies and vampire and the use of blood and quantum physics. And there's just so much stuff in that compilation. And so I'm really happy to get that out to everybody that hasn't had the opportunity to read these individual journals. So yeah, that just came out, and then there's Harab Serapal, which was co-authored by Edgar Kervel as well, and that just came out paperback and Kindle, and that was an older release that was released through Sirius Publishing as well, and had never been put out, in paperback. So those three are out there now, and of course, Smokeless Fire, the original, is still out there. I do suggest if one wants to pick up Smokeless Fire 2 that they do obtain the first volume. It is a companion to that. It's really not to be worked with on its own. So those two books together pretty much cover everything in that regard.
Yeah, you don't want to jump ahead in the workings and then end up making a mistake. It's best to go back and start it from the beginning. But every one of these works, folks, are powerful. They're great reads. They are great practices and procedures that you can use to change and manifest your life, manifest the things around you, and really do some wonderful work. I have recently picked up the Harab Serapal book, and once again, I mean, this man amazes me because I don't get scared often, but I was reading this book, and there's some things I'm going to do from the book. I actually have plans to do a couple of the things coming up, but there was a few of the procedures in that book that I'm like, I'm not even trying to dabble with this. So you, once again, probably want to tread lightly, but there are some very, very powerful works here. So make sure you pick up 1, 2, or all of the books from S. Ben Qayin and support him and what he's doing on his journey, because the more you do that, the more he's able to do with his workings, the more he's able to release and write, and this man needs to continue to write and keep putting out works that help other practitioners out there. So make sure you support him. Real quick, I'm going to jump into my other highlight of my other sponsor. This is going to be on my second sponsor. Excuse me, I lost my train of thought there for a moment. It's Goetic Impressions, who I have certainly several of their pieces that I work with, one of which being my Goetia Solomon circle and triangle that I use, that I've had some pretty awesome things happen with, and it's very well done. I mean, it saves you from having to make your own circle and draw your own circle out, your own triangle manifestation. It comes all together as one very nice mat, and it's powerful and it works. So make sure you check that out, but I'm going to read you a little bit about them. Goetic Impressions formed as a partnership between Ben, which is Frater Adamastro, and Sor Alara, with the intent to bring ritual accurate magical tools to the public for an affordable price. One of the largest barriers to entry for new practitioners looking to experiment with magic of the Western grimoires is how expensive and difficult it is to find real ritual tools at a good price. They first launched with a Kickstarter to bring their Goetic medallions to life, and since then have also expanded with an Enochian tool set, and most recently a Satanic medallion and altar set, which is currently live on Kickstarter. With over 20 years of magical and occult experience across a range of traditions, Goetic Impressions is the place to find affordable, high-quality ritual items. You can check them out at www.goeticimpressions.com. Again, that's goeticimpressions.com. And if you use promo code KOTN 1020, it'll give you 10% off your overall order until the end of midnight on Halloween, so there's not a whole lot of time left on that. I suggest you go check them out, pick up something for yourself. It'll get you 10% off. Again, that is KOTN to stand for Knights of the Nephilim, the name of the show. So KOTN 1020, 10% off your overall order until midnight on Halloween. Thank you guys to both companies for, obviously sponsoring the show. As we wrap up here, the last couple things I wanted to go over, Ben, and have you go over and tell us is going to be, you obviously do service for hire. So I wanted you to tell us a little bit about the services that you do offer, where we can check you out at as far as your sites and platforms that you're on, and anybody that you would like to thank.
Actually, I do ritual work for anybody who is sometimes, even a seasoned magician would prefer somebody else handle something for various reasons. But I do a lot of I do packs. I used to do baneful work. I'm really not into that right now. Something that I'm kind of putting to the wayside. So I'm really focusing on opening up new paths for people. I'm working on astral rebalancing for people, working on pacts, as I said, to help people move forward, love spells, essentially, or bindings. I use a lot of tarot in my work as well. I also offer tarot services. You want a reading, you want to look at anything, that's available. If you just want to talk about whatever magical situation you're in, I do offer consultations as well. So there's a lot of things. Crystal gazing that I'm involved in doing, which is that's a whole other subject and interesting. So there's a lot of different services. You can find me on sbenqayin.com, but really the best way to get a hold of me is through Messenger on Facebook. It works really well for me to be able to just get back to whoever's talking to me. So that's places. Right now, I do have something coming up in just a couple of days, which is the Ritual of the Blood Moon, and that's open to anybody who wants to participate in this. It's $19.97, but it's small fee. But what I'm doing is this is something I was doing for myself of coming to the end of the year, closing doors of old relationships, closing doors of failed job opportunities, or closing doors of any kind of disappointment or failure, putting it behind and opening up whole new paths to success, to happiness, to love, to these things that we're looking for in our life. And so on this night, on the Sabbath, would be writing everybody's name down that wants to do this, and offering my own personal blood for those and myself to move forward in this new path, in this new chapter, because it's called the Hunter's Moon as well, the Blood Moon. It's about ending old things and opening up new doors. So it's something that's really powerful. It is full moon on Halloween or the Sabbath, so it's absolutely perfect to do this, because as the moon at that point wanes, so will and dies off, essentially, so does these past disappointments or failures or things, where it can once it's gone, it can regrow again or be reborn again with the new moon. So it's a real powerful ritual that's coming up. If anybody wants to do that, I'm happy to add you into my own personal ritual. And again, you can hit me up on Facebook or Messenger, and I'll be happy to help out.
You heard it, folks. Don't take it lightly either, because this is a very special time. I mean, two full moons in this month of October, right. 2020. The second one being the Hunter's Moon, and the next time that you're going to experience a full moon on Halloween is 19 years from now. So it's not going to happen again anytime soon. And the last time that you will have a moon that can be seen from every side of the United States at one point in time, literally everyone can see this across the country, is a rare phenomenon. It hasn't happened since 1944, and it's happening tomorrow night into Halloween and on Halloween as well, or on the Sabbath. So it's a very special time, very powerful, very powerful. Great. Yeah, it's a very powerful time to be doing things. Tomorrow night, I actually have been planning this for 6 months. Tomorrow night myself, I am going to be very, very deep into some heavy workings, very similar to what S. Ben Qayin just said, is as far as cutting old paths that no longer serve me and wait and moving forward. So I suggest, if you're looking for something powerful to help change your life, please contact him, be a part of this. You're limited on time for this, so jump on his site or jump on Messenger. As he said, that's the easiest way to contact him. Look him up and message him. Get it going. It's a cheap price to change your life. All right, so let's look. Last thing here, and then we're going to go ahead and close out, is anybody you would like to thank, and anything we can expect from you coming up as far as any other books, any other workings, and that's about it.
As far as anything working on right now, it's funny, I've had this great, inspirational spur to get all this stuff out, but I'm kind of at the end of the line right now, so I've come back to my own personal system I'm working with Moon Magick, working with my own thing. The book is just in its infancy right now, so I'm working on that and towards those energies. I would like to thank you, first of all, for having me tonight. I appreciate this very much.
Absolutely, brother.
It's an honor to be here and be able to spread whatever gnosis I have here to those who can possibly apply it. I'd like to thank David Moore and Paula Moore. These are a brother and sister in my magical tribe. I'd like to thank Edgar Kervel. I'd like to thank Ian MacGyver. I would like to thank Gary Dassing. And everybody who's been in my life that has really helped me along on my path personally here, especially lately. Huge love to you, and I thank you guys all for your support. So thank you very much.
Well, you heard it, folks. All great names and all great people, and it helps shape a very, very powerful man. So much love to all of you for what you've done, because he's been an influence on me. Now, before we close out for the night, folks, I do want to say our next episode, let me pull up the date, is going to be... I just had it up and it closed itself down, so bear with me. Dun, dun, dun. 2 weeks from now, so next week we have a bye week, but on the 12th, that is Thursday, November 12th, 8 to 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we will be hanging out with Raw Vega, talking about alchemy, talking about sun magic, talking about a lot of really awesome things. So make sure you tune in on that episode. And then the following week, we will be hanging out with Thomas Leroy, who owns and has created and runs the Sect of the Horn God, which is a pretty awesome group. So I look forward to hanging out with him and getting to talk about his organization, what it is they do on the path to Satanism and on the left-hand path. So, some different topics. We're always bringing you something different, something fun, and something enlightening from the left-handed path to the right, as I say in my bio, from Hindu to Hoodoo, from Satanism to Santaria, from Enochian to Goetic, and everything in between. We are not just one-sided. We do heavily stick to the left, obviously, but we bring everything, and everyone is welcome. If it circulates around magic and opening the doorways within ourselves to become, the more powerful beings that we truly are, we support it. If you guys have any thoughts, any ideas, like I said, celestialoddities@gmail.com. You can email us, celestialoddities@gmail.com, and I will get back to you the same day always, or you can message me on my private Facebook, Freighter Crow. Or, lastly, you can message us on the actual show page, Knights of the Nephilim. Make sure if you like the show, you go leave me a review. We are in our infancy right now, so, going to check that out, leaving reviews on it, sending invites, and sharing the page around does a lot more for me than you probably realize. I have a lot planned for you guys, so I wanted to bring something powerful, something unique, and something awesome for the magic and occult community. So if it resonates with you, please help me out and help me grow it. It would be much appreciated. And other than that, that's really about it. I want to thank you guys all for listening and tuning in. Make sure you hit that like, share, and follow button. And other than that, S-Ben Qayin, I want to thank you, brother, for coming on tonight and giving us a great show, a great interview, and certainly a lot of great information.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much again for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you heard it, guys. We'll catch you next time on Knights of the Nephilim. I'm Freighter Crow, and we'll see you then. Take care.